Microsoft Viva is the next stage of your digital transformation. It's all about the employee experience and bringing it together through Teams.
We never need to worry about when do I use Teams, when do I use Yammer. We don't. You use Viva.
How people work and communicate will come together even more through Microsoft Teams.
It's all about wellbeing, connections, focus, empowerment, growth, and purpose.
Connections, bringing your channels together in one place and connecting your employees.
Insights, give leaders, managers, and people data-driven help to make informed decisions on how they're working.
Topics, simplify finding information and experts across the organisation to get time back.
Learning, developing our people and giving them the platform to learn new skills and grow.
Find out how we can support your journey through Viva and create the best employee experience.
Hi everyone, I think we might be having a few issues with the connection with Jesse. So sorry about that. So Jesse was obviously starting to take us through the agenda slide for today. We've got a fabulous pieces of information to take you through, and we can't wait to share with you some of the information that we've got today. So as Jesse was saying, we're going to do a bit of an introduction to who we are as WM Reply first, followed up with actually introducing what is Microsoft Viva and how we're going to be using it and how are you going to start using it to make the most of your employee experience. Finally, I'll be taking you through some of the things you can get ready now so you are ready for your Microsoft Viva journey. And then we'll be handing it over to one of our customers, that's Transport for London with James, and he's going to be taking us through some of the things that TfL have been doing today to get ready for theirs. And then the panel session with everyone that we've got on the call today, who you've already been introduced to make sure that we can get the most out of what we're doing. So without further ado, let's get started. So who are WM Reply? This will take a few seconds. So we as WM Reply are part of the Reply Group. We're over 13,000 people, part of the Italian Stock Exchange, many different countries from around the world. Here you've got the London and the US office on with you, and over 250 active clients. And obviously, we're all about digital change and transformation, helping our clients and helping our people get the most out of what they're trying to do. And as part of that, we as WM Reply want to do the most for you. So moving on. At WM Reply, we do two things and we do them fantastically. It's digital workplaces and it's websites for our partnership with Microsoft and Sitecore. What we want to do is help you get the most out of those digital workplaces. So focusing on them today, it's all about SharePoint, Teams, Yammer, and obviously the Power Platform. We've been working with Microsoft for a really long time and our accreditations are just part of that. Gold Microsoft Partner, one of 3 Yammer adoption specialists in the whole of Europe, a Teams champion, and our adoption change management team are all ProSci certified, and that's the methodology that we like to use when working with people. So what do we actually mean when it's about change, and how do we help people drive forward in that? Well, what we know today is that organizations want to and need to engage their employees more. What we need to do is really make sure that we're driving things forward and that we're helping people really get the most out of the platforms that they've got available to them.
Great, thanks, David. So over the last year, we've seen a huge transformation in the way that businesses work. And we've seen that businesses have really transformed to meet the needs of their customers and to continue doing business in a hybrid or remote way, being tremendously resilient and agile in the way that they work so that they can continue delivering value to their stakeholders. So many customers and many companies have went remote or to hybrid models and shifted the way that they're doing business. But now more and more we're seeing that we need to make this work more sustainable. We see that a lot of employees are feeling disconnected, they're feeling isolated, they're stuck in back-to-back meetings, and overall, they're feeling really burnt out. So we know that there's this need to improve employee engagement. And this is nothing new to business leaders. Business leaders around the world have been looking for ways to get their employees to lean in or feel more connected to their coworkers or more comfortable sharing ideas and feedback with leadership for a long time. But in the current marketplace, there are a lot of point solutions that offer ways to address this, but we haven't quite seen a great suite-wide solution that offers solutions to these challenges. So more than ever, we're really seeing that people are the key to business success. So the stats that we're showing here really back up this research, that employees who are more engaged are more likely to stay at their company, they're more likely to contribute positively to their company, they're going to find more positive results in their own personal and career development, and at the end of the day, this leads to overall greater profitability for the organization. So it's the right thing to do for employees, and it's the right thing to do for business. And that's really led us as Microsoft to announce a new employee experience platform called Microsoft Viva. And the goal of Microsoft Viva is to empower people and teams to be their best. And we're doing this through 4 modules. The first is Viva Connections, which we can really view as the launch pad for the employee experience platform of Microsoft Viva. This is your one-stop shop that brings in the other modules and gives you all the power of your intranet and news and conversations, company tasks, a dashboard of your resources, all in a single place. And the great thing is that this is customizable and it's personalizable. So each employee is going to get an experience that's entirely unique to them and the things that they need to accomplish in their workday. And then for the business, it's customizable where they can add their own logo on top of it. They can make it their own, so it really serves as a company home for them. Next is Viva Insights. Viva Insights provides data-driven insights about the way that employees and teams, managers, and the entire organization is working to help improve productivity, but also improve well-being and ensure that folks carve out time on their calendars for focus time, that they can get recommendations on how to work more cohesively, and to overall lead to a more sustainable work style. Now, of course, security and privacy is key and at the core of everything that Microsoft does. So all of these working insights are anonymized to protect the individual privacy of the employee. So they're generalized and anonymized so that you can see trends about how folks are working and about how the business is working. But by no means is this an app that is supposed to look over the shoulder of a particular employee's work style. Next, we have Viva Learning, which makes it easy to have curated and kind of unstructured content in a learning app in the flow of a way that Microsoft business or that an employee is working, rather. So it makes it really easy to bring in first-party content or third-party content to create digital learning cohorts for managers to assign learning and track the progress, to ensure that employees are growing in the way that the business needs in terms of staying compliant, but also learning and getting recommended learning so that they can grow in their own career. And lastly, Viva Topics, which is all about helping employees get the knowledge they need where they're working. So basically, Viva Topics is it is an AI-powered Microsoft Graph solution that works across the apps that employees use every day to serve them knowledge and help make them smarter or understand what's happening at their business without having to go disrupt their workday and go into Microsoft Search or spend time trying to find that document or learn what that acronym means. Essentially, it's like Wikipedia, but AI is taking the first draft. It organizes all of this knowledge into topic cards, which employees can click into, learn more about, see who the key players are, and continue on with their workday. So with that, let's move forward and go a little bit deeper.
So it's a great way to begin and end your day with Viva Connections. And as Michael pointed out, it's pulling all of the Viva Insights, Viva Learning, Viva Topics into one ultimate employee experience. So you start your day with news you can use in Connections. You can pull business processes in through the new dashboard functionality. News and tasks can be curated for specific audience groups across your organization, whether that's leadership, sales teams, your frontline workers. Topics is going to enable quick access to knowledge and experts right within the team's experience. Learning will also become a seamless part of your daily workflow, with insights bringing in wellness and ways of working. And then you can end your day with a virtual commute, wrap up your tasks, and have a moment for that mindful reflection. So Microsoft Viva all working together to bring a seamless employee experience all together in one place. So to talk more about Viva Connections, we're going to turn it over to Chris McNulty.
So the first thing we want to spend a little bit of time on here is Viva Connections. So one of the things that has driven Microsoft to recognize that there is more that we can do here is looking at the statistics and trends that we've seen with the digital transformations that the world has been moving through for the past 15 months. One of our findings is that more than half of the workforce feels disconnected from their teams and their organizations now that organizations have embraced remote work and hybrid work. And so our answer to that is Viva Connections. So as Michael was saying earlier, Viva Connections really is our tool for shaping communications and culture, recognizing that we are unlikely to use the same tools to drive culture moving forward that we did in the past. We may no longer be gathering my entire department or division into one room for a town hall. So how do we replicate that feeling of connectedness in a digital workspace that is combining the best of historic work practices with moving forward hybrid work practices? So Viva Connections delivers that tailored, personalized company application inside of Teams, helping people find the communications, the resources, the news, and activities that make the most sense to them. It is tailored to their individual experience, and it allows leadership to engage in those really important bilateral communications. So Connections brings that information together. Probably the best way to understand it is to take a look at Connections in action. So here you can see that I am inside of the Relic Cloud app, which is built using Connections. And the Relic Cloud app lives inside Teams, and it leverages Microsoft investments in technologies like Sharepoint, Yammer, Stream, live events, and more. And so we've designed the app so that it will also work in mobile form factors. So here I can see I've also got a great experience that's tailored to me and tailored to the device I'm on, so that regardless of where I'm from, I can participate and contribute to my organization's culture. So as we take a look at that mobile device, it's designed so we can see the communications that are going on from around the organization. I can get a great experience, and I can also participate in that communication by being able to add my own comments if I want to, even though I may not be in a traditional desk environment. The mobile experience parallels the experience you're going to get through the desktop view, being able to discover news and announcements from around the organization that are targeted to me and are tailored to my experience based on the signals we get from inside of the graph. We also have a new capability here. It's called the dashboard. The dashboard brings together a focused view of all of the activities that are going to make the most sense for me in my role. I can see things like health check, engagements with benefits, expenses, tasks, approvals, questions, and more. And the dashboard is also a place where we can bring together some of the key investments from inside of Microsoft Viva. Here I'm seeing some of the resources that we'll see later on that are coming over from Viva Insights and from Viva Learning. And the dashboard is also designed to give a great experience to people who are running on mobile form factors, so they can also experience that dashboard. So based on my role, I can see targeted experiences here, such as shift experiences. So reminding me that based on my role, I may need to clock in for my shift starting in a few minutes. And the dashboard experience, again, comes together across mobile, desktop, and tablet form factors, adapting itself to the ways that people work and allowing me to deliver those cultural tools to drive a great experience. And in many ways, Viva Connections is also the launch pad for the rest of Viva. As you can see, elements here shown throughout. So we're really excited, as we had announced last month. Viva Connections Desktop is already at general availability. And so we're really excited about people being able to take one of those first steps with employee experience moving ahead. Second, Viva Insights. Viva Insights is a response to other data that we've seen. One of those examples is the fact that we've seen employee work levels skyrocketing, while employee burnout is definitely taking its toll on that workforce. Job demands are up, well-being has declined. That's a recipe for disaster. So Viva Insights uses the signals that we get from the Microsoft Graph to understand and coach individuals, teams, and organizations to be at their best. Based on investments that we've made in tools like Workplace Analytics and My Analytics, Viva Insights uses privacy-protected signals to be able to deliver coaching and engagement at individual, team, and organizational levels. You as an individual can see reminders to protect personal time, stay connected to key contributors, and make sure that you're reserving time for key activities like email and learning, being delivered through Teams, as well as through other coaching throughout tools like Outlook. For teams and organizations, Viva Insights supplies key data that masks the individual, but to see how the workforce changes are shifting. When are people working and how are people communicating with each other? Where's signals of burnout? Where's capacity being constrained? And also allows you to analyze that data by integrating other data from line of business applications and other systems of engagement, things like Zoom or Slack, to be able to create a holistic picture and see some real meaningful trends about, for instance, what are the collaboration habits of your organization's top performers? Or how can we see employee survey results mapped against the ways that people work around the organization? So some really powerful tools, and again, probably best seen in action. So this is the personal experience of Viva Insights. So I can take a look and see how I'm doing. I have options to remind myself to take time for focus, to make sure that I need time with one-on-one, to make sure that I'm engaging and reminding colleagues about the opportunities to thank them or praise work that they've done.
And Chris,
So
I see this. Just want to jump in. I see this concept of a virtual commute here. Can you talk for just a minute about what that is?
Surely. So the virtual commute is the idea of being able to create a pause between your work life and your personal life. It is completely optional, and we also recognize that with changing workforce dynamics, you may want to take that virtual commute at a different time of the day. So let's take a look at this in action. You get a reminder to take a look at the activities that you've had for the day, and with an option to close out those tasks or carry them over to tomorrow. Also, a reminder to take a look at what your activities look like for the following morning, and optional things like guided meditation to take me forward through there. The idea of a virtual commute is really based on some cognitive science work that we've done over the past year, that the lack of a barrier between work life and personal life makes it much harder for people to actually get any level of rest and recharge, as well as making it harder to distinguish and approach the next work interval and prepared and refreshed. So giving that extra time to think about the work that someone's been done, optionally reflect on your experience for the day. There are things that are happening in neuroscience where your brain is actually fitting and integrating all of the work that you've done during that day to kind of get it ready and finalized so that you can then not be hopefully continuing to answer email at 10 or 11 at night the following day. So for teams and organizations, managers can see privacy protected statistics across their team. And some of the ways that we protect privacy is you need to have at least 10 people on your team to be able to generate meaningful data. If you have a team of 1, it's kind of hard to protect privacy. So we're really trying to take that balance there. So I can see here that people are working after hours significantly. People are responding during quiet hours. One-on-one activity looks good, but it looks like capacity is starting to get constrained here. So I can take a look at these to see how my team is doing, benchmarked against similar teams in my organization, and see recommendations as how my team can do a better job of unplugging at the end of the day, with reminders like virtual commute, as well as to be able to give suggestions to people about turning off notifications, making it okay to decline meetings scheduled after hours, and a playbook to put more context around that. At an organizational level, leadership can see right now that 37% of the teams here at ReliCloud are not strongly cohesive, meaning there's a high risk of isolation leading to burnout. You can review plans here, as well as take a look at how collaboration activities are shifting around the organization. A powerful way that I can crack into all of that work and collaborative data by being able to integrate that with line of business work. Here, looking at how people's collaboration hours have shifted based on their role inside of the company, and also being able to integrate external data, showing here data that's been coming in from tools like Zoom and from Slack. So a powerful way from the individual all the way on up to the boardroom to be able to keep an eye on what's important for my workforce. We can also bring together data from employee survey tools like Glint, and here map it onto collaborative data to be able to see, based on how employees are reporting their feelings about company interest and well-being, take a look at how that splits out by job role, by individual contributor roles, all the way on through to manager, and how much time they're spending on collaboration on a weekly basis. Being able to see that we're doing quite well with individual contributors, but there's definitely a correlation between people feeling burned out and people spending 4 more hours a week in collaborative activity. So our third module I would like to walk us through this morning is Viva Learning. And so with Viva Learning, we recognize that over 3/4 of CEOs see talent and skills as being the key ingredient to drive their organizations forward to new levels of profit and success. We also have found that more than half of employees greatly appreciate the opportunity to improve their skills through the course of their job. But that doesn't seem to happen. And why? Less than 1% of employee time is actually spent in the work week learning new skills. Simply put, it is too hard for people to find all the resources that are available to them to improve their skills. And that has shaped the nature of Viva Learning. So the core idea of Viva Learning is to bring learning into the flow of work. Based on the Microsoft Graph and the rest of Microsoft 365 and investments in tools like Sharepoint and Teams, Viva Learning takes education, whether it's formal coursework from Microsoft or third-party sources, or things as simple as casual learning, which could be a PowerPoint, a PDF, or a video. Being able to integrate all of those catalogs into an experience that people can come to through Viva Learning in Teams to find the courses that make sense for them. And then being able to allow managers to propose and suggest and share coursework so that people can have those experiences delivered through the flow of work. And again, let's take a look at Viva Learning in action. So here I'm seeing the My Learning screen. And in the My Learning screen, I can see courses that have been assigned to me. And those assignments are being driven by our integrations with major learning management system providers, such as Cornerstone On Demand, SAP SuccessFactors, and Saba. I can see courses that are going to be recommended to me based on my teams and patterns of interaction with signals coming from the Microsoft Graph. And I can also browse the full catalog from Skillsoft, Pluralsight, Coursera, edX, Microsoft sources such as LinkedIn Learning, MS Learn, M365, and more. I can take a look at classes directly inside of Teams, and without having to browse or hunt or search for a different portal, I can see what's been assigned to me and why, and get a summary of it. And if I choose to, launch that directly from inside Teams so that my entire experience stays in the flow of my work. We also make it possible for you to discover and share courses based on social interactions. So we have integrations into the chat interface of Teams so that if I want to send a recommendation to a class to someone that I know, I can just add it here with my own comments. That's a relatively recent addition. Viva Learning has been in private preview and now public preview for several months. And that's just based on findings we've gotten from our preview customers. They really seem to appreciate these social ways of sharing, as well as allowing managers to integrate classes and embed them inside of Teams channels so that people can discover them based on their role interactions as well. So here I can see one of those tabs right now, and I can see which classes have been suggested or proposed here. And again, launch it from inside of Teams. And I can see why something was assigned and be able to manage which classes have been assigned and review how my team has consumed these classes. And I can see that we've asked 193 people to take it, and I can browse this, pulling in data from my learning management systems to show who's finished, who's in progress, and who might need a little bit more time to get their work completed here. So our next area to take a look at is what we are doing with knowledge. And again, we have heard from organizations around the world based on our surveys and investments we've made with market analysts that there are broad common challenges that people have finding knowledge and putting it to work in their organization. That the flood of unstructured information creates chaos. It's hard to find information, it's hard to process, it's hard to make sure that it's secured. Relying on search can be a good starting point, but knowing exactly when and where to search can be challenging. And having to jump to different tools to find things creates frustration, and it's also a tremendous drain in productivity. And I think that many of these challenges should feel similar in your organization. So we solve the challenges of knowledge in Microsoft 365 with two related tools. First, Sharepoint Syntax. Sharepoint Syntax begins the journey of turning content into knowledge, and it's truly a magical system. It allows ordinary users to work with data and to capture their expertise about the data by using no-code AI models. Simply put, all that I need to do is grab 5 or 6 documents and use a visual interface to tag the key parts of each document that I want to pull out. Those facts and figures, how can we tell that this is a purchase order or this is a contract? And then Syntax does the rest. Syntax will then step in and turn that content into knowledge by using my tagging to build no-code AI models, which everyone can then use anytime they upload a document into the places where I deploy those models. And for that, let's take a quick look here. So Syntax is organized around the idea of the content center. And the content center is the home for both my employee experiences of content, as well as the place where I can go to structure and create models. So here, this is a model I have built for a transactional document. This is a particular kind of document that comes after a stock purchase called a confirmation. And I can take a look and see a handful of documents that I have supplied, so you can see the kinds of documents that we're working with. So here you can see that we have a financial transaction document that has lots of details about the security that's been exchanged, when and where, and what the fees are. Now, since I work in finance, I understand these documents in my example here, but I know lots of people may need to be able to read and process those. So we're able to build a model here to go pull out key data. And all that I need to do to build one of these models is to open up some sample documents and use this simple visual indicator shown here on the right to go through and highlight the sections of the document where there's key information I want to pull out. That's all I need to do. I need to do this for about 5 documents, show some examples visually, and Syntax will do the rest. Once that's done, I can deploy that model to multiple areas and environments. And people can invoke these models as simply as just working with uploading files, whether it's coming through interaction or it's coming in through email or some sort of batch process. And so all I need to do to grab these, I'm going to grab one of these files and upload it. And in the background, Syntax will start the process of modifying and reviewing this. Now, earlier today, I uploaded a number of documents, and you can see that we've already pulled out a lot of data here from these. So you can see the document that's being processed right now, but we can also see what Syntax has discovered out of each one of these documents. So we can see out of each of these, I've pulled out the key customers, trade dates, details about the security, and dollar values. And I'm also using Power Automate to be able to automatically look for things that might require additional attention, such as large transactions or transactions with unusually high fees. All of these can be brought back into Teams. So as a manager, I can step in and see trades that require additional attention. I don't need to understand the security documents. All I need to do is upload them, and then my workflow will route it to me. And so here inside Teams, I can see the approvals app and be able to say, are we ready to approve this? And of course, with approvals, you can interact with those through portals, through mobile apps, through Outlook, as well as increasingly here inside of Teams. So now we know we've brought documents into a process, and we've been able to pull out those key facts and figures. Enriching content is essential to being able to turn it into knowledge. So let's take a look at that again here. So turning knowledge into something that drives action is the job for Viva Topics. Viva Topics uses AI to reason over all of the information that you store inside of Microsoft 365, as well as content that you have brought in from outside Microsoft 365 using our content connectors delivered through part of Syntax. With Viva Topics, AI creates a map of all of the topics that live inside your organization's content. And it uses signals from the graph to identify people who are likely experts on each of those topics. And it brings information together into topic pages. You can think of a topic page as being like a first draft of a Wikipedia for your organization that is written by AI Think about, having these robot interns pulling information together for you. And then experts can go in, review, curate, and approve those topics. Once approved, those topic pages then are available as topic cards, little capsule summaries that will pop up inside of the applications of Microsoft 365, inside SharePoint, Outlook, Teams, the Office clients, Microsoft Search, and more. And again, let's take a look at this in action. So here you can see I'm inside of my Teams environment. And on my team, I'm new to this and I see an acronym. We've all seen people who drop these acronyms or product codes or things that they may be unfamiliar with into casual conversation. And it's disruptive for me to have to run a search or to ask a question every time. But I see that there's something about this, that there's a highlight, and it doesn't look like an ordinary hyperlink. So if I hover over that, what I get is the topic card. The topic card is a capsule summary of everything I might need to know in context about what SOAR means. I can see that it's a project. I can see other names that people have used for it, definitions and where they came from, key experts, as well as resources coming from inside of Microsoft 365, as well as external sources that have been mapped in using the content connectors as part of Sharepoint Syntax. If I need even more information, I just tap on the topic card and I'm brought to the topic page, which is an immersive view that has more space for an expanded view of experts, key resources from around the organizations, questions and answers that have been surfaced from conversations that are automatically mapped in from Yammer, and a map of related topics. And if I still need more answers, if there's a question I have that's not here on the page, I can just ask it. If Viva Topics knows the answer, it will supply it. But if it doesn't, it knows which experts it can bring in on this to propose an answer. And once that answer has been out there and accepted, it gets added to our collective knowledge. As Viva Topics learns more, everyone gets to share in the benefits. Now, individual topics are a powerful way that I can improve my learning in the flow of work. But we also have new experiences as are coming for me, so I can keep track of multiple topics. Here, taking a look at what my experience is and things that I may want to pay attention to in the flow of my work. Taking a look at recommended topics, key activities happening around the topics that I already follow, as well as suggested learning that's proposed to me based on the topics and the signals that we get from the Microsoft Graph. The Topic Center is also the place where a knowledge manager can come to manage topics, to be able to see the flow of suggested, confirmed, and published topics around the organization, and being able to drill into individual ones to curate them. But we know there may be large numbers of topics in your organization, so we also give you metadata to help you understand which topics are getting the most and least engagement, as well as quality signals, so you can focus your time on the subjects that matter most to you and to your workforce. So, and Viva Topics is now in general availability, along with Sharepoint Syntax. So that's kind of a quick tour of the core capabilities that we have inside Microsoft Viva. So let me turn this back to you.
Thank you so much, Chris. That was really informative. It was so great to see so many great features that are going to be coming into the employee experience with Microsoft Viva. We're going to switch slides really quickly, and next up we have David Callahan, a modern workplace and adoption and change management lead from WM Reply, and he's going to inform all of us about how we can go about getting Viva ready. David, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks very much, Jessie, and great to have you back with us. So Chris has just shown us there so many things that we can get ready to look forward to, and some of which we can actually start using now. And obviously here at WM Reply, we like to always put people at the forefront of the technology that they can start to use and start to really think about how can we get the most out of this and how can we be prepared for the technology and all these wonderful benefits that Viva is going to bring us. So obviously, I'm going to be taking you through 10 things that you can do now to get ready for Viva. And obviously, if you've got any questions about anything I say, please feel free to use the Q&A functionality that's available to you. Forgot what it was called then. And we will obviously be having the panel coming up, so feel free to ask any questions based on anything that Chris has taken us through as well. So where do we start? So with us, we like to start all about discovery and personas. How do we really know how our people work? Do we really know how people are communicating, interacting, and where do people really go to actually find information? And all of this comes down to, how can we actually start to get the most out of Viva? And it's through this period of discovery by working with people based on kind of where they work, the groups they work in, maybe the teams or departments, and starting to draw out those common themes about, how do people work? What is, delaying their being more productive? How can they start to get the most out of the opportunities of Viva? And from that, we can start to bring out these personas. And what these personas allow us to do is start to think about the next stage, which is our planning. So when it comes to planning, we obviously want to talk about when we're going to launch this. Stuff might be available now or in the near future from the different modules of Viva. And obviously, it's really important that what we do is we start to think about when we're going to launch these and how we're going to get the most out of that functionality. So obviously, Chris showed us there as part of Viva Connections. You've got the dashboard as part of Viva Connections. And actually, if we want to get the most out of that piece of functionality, how can we plan today to make that happen? What integrations do we want? What applications can we bring in to create that best possible employee experience? And one of the most common questions we get here at WM Reply is what tool when? What should I be using when in order for to do this task or to be more productive or to communicate with Joe in accounts, whatever it might be. And actually looking at the landscape of tools that you've got available today and starting to think about where the different modules of Viva are going to fit in as part of that is only going to help people understand from across the organization how to get the most out of Viva. And obviously then we've got a slightly big question. What does success look like? How is it that we can start to think about success when we've launched the different modules, when people are starting to interact with the platform? And that's a really big question. But obviously, it can boil down to something really simple. Are we trying to solve an existing problem? Are we trying to achieve something or maybe go against our competitors and take that competitive edge? So whatever success looks like to you in the organization, start to think about where Viva can help with that. And obviously, as we've discovered from our first stage, as we've drawn out those personas, as we started to plan, we can probably start to consider the wider business case and the wider engagement and which stakeholders we need to get involved. And that leads us nicely onto pilots. Topics, as we've heard from Chris there, is live now. But what teams could pilot it? How can we start to measure success within those pilots? And when you start to think about the other parts of Viva, such as learning, and piloting them with smaller groups, what is going to be the value and the impact of that? So it could be that maybe topics isn't going to be useful for everyone across the organization, but there's people that maybe work in a particular department or a particular function where it's going to be extremely important that they know all this information. Obviously, something that's happened a lot recently is that organizations have had to onboard people remotely. Imagine being a new starter and having access to topics, and all those questions that you might have had would be solved because those acronyms, which we so easily use, start to get broken down and we can easily find those experts. And again, those pilots link back to the business case. By conducting those pilots with those smaller teams, looking at what's happened, measuring the impact, that's how we can start to understand the wider benefit across the organization. And finally, and next, frontline workers. How different is our frontline worker strategy going to be to the rest of the business? You might not think that you've actually got frontline workers, but do you have people that are consistently out on the road? Very few touch points with people face to face in an office. They are our frontline workforce out there day to day. But how are they going to access something like Viva? Do they have access to Teams today for a mobile device, whether it be a corporate device or BYOD, bring your own device? Topics would have picked up on that for me there. But do they need devices? What needs to be configured in the admin center to make that happen? And it's really important that the licensing is ready today so that people can start to access these benefits and use and get the benefit of Viva by getting that planning in, thinking about our frontline workers, and knowing such simple things like conditions of access, like multi-factor authentication. What do we need to turn on, configure, change to enable this to happen for our frontline workers tomorrow? Next, our SharePoint modern intranet. We've seen there in the demo from Chris about Viva Connections. That interaction and being able to engage with our intranet just through the single pane platform of Teams is a massive benefit. We're not having to open multiple windows, have different applications open. We can land in Teams and see the rest of our day. And that's great. However, is our SharePoint intranet ready to go? Is our intranet even in SharePoint? What can we do to start get ready now? And what steps do you need to take to make that happen? And then when it comes to Yammer and we start to think about launching and adopting, we've started to hear a lot about a new Yammer, and we obviously ran our Fall in Love with Yammer last year. But what does that actually mean? So I know we've got Steve on the call who's going to help me out here a little bit to talk about the new Yammer and where all of this fits in as part of Viva.
Yeah, thanks, David, and thanks for walking our customers and our partners through some of the things to consider as we continue to roll out parts of Viva. Before we get into the new Yammer, a couple of things I just wanted to call out. You saw Chris talk through some of the elements of Viva Connections, also, of course, Viva Topics. I just wanted to highlight a few things, especially as it relates to Yammer and SharePoint and how those will contribute to those experiences. David just talked about the SharePoint Intranet. If you're running SharePoint today, you have your intranet based on SharePoint, maybe you've created your home sites already, then you've taken a great step towards making having your intranet really light up in a great way within Viva Connections. For those of you that are running Yammer and you have vibrant Yammer communities, really excited to have James here to talk about what they've been doing at Transport for London. But for those of you that are already using Yammer today, already using SharePoint, you've got a great head start on having a fantastic Viva Connections experience. Activity from communities that your employees are in, announcements, live events that you might be running in Yammer, those things will start to just show up naturally within the Viva Connections feed that Chris talked through earlier. For those of you that are still maybe on the fence about Yammer, maybe you're not using Yammer today, or maybe even you're using Teams and you think Teams is a platform for you to run your communities in, certainly that's an option for you. That's a consideration for you to use Teams for that purpose. However, what I will say is that we purpose-built Yammer to be the place within the Microsoft 365 suite for your employees to really come together around communities, discover new knowledge, discover new information at a scale that is difficult to do in other places across the suite. So we highly, highly recommend that you run your communities in Yammer in order for those experiences to show up vibrantly within Viva Connections. If you happen to be running your communities in Teams, again, that's a choice that you can make. Just know that those communities, quote unquote, won't necessarily show up in the Viva Connections experience. We're also doing a lot of work with Chris and their team on Viva Topics as well. So you might know within Yammer, you have the ability to assign topics to various conversations or threads. And those topics will accrue to the broader Viva Topics experience. So if you've applied a topic in Yammer, you hover over it, you have the ability to see the topic card that Chris showed you earlier, and then click through into that topic or that Wikipedia, internal Wikipedia experience as well. So all of those things will converge together. Yammer, we're really excited to have the knowledge and expertise, the tacit knowledge that gets built up in your Yammer networks, really accrue nicely into the Viva Topics experience as well. In addition to those experiences that we'll continue to work on to really make the Viva Connections and Viva Topics experiences great, we continue to also work on a number of things within the Yammer experience to make sure that, again, your employees can come together around communities, share knowledge at scale, connect with experts, and also create that deep sense of employee engagement. A couple of things that I'll note: we are in the process, as David said, rolling out the new Yammer. I think this week you might notice that your Yammer networks will default to the new Yammer experience. We've gotten a lot of great feedback from many of you. Many of you are enjoying the new Yammer experience, are also giving us feedback on things that we can do to improve. Hopefully you're seeing some of those improvements as well. Things like suggested communities over on the right rail of Yammer. We've added a suggested communities module, leveraging our machine learning algorithm to make sure that people can get into the right communities, those that are highly relevant to them. We're also rolling out a new desktop experience as well. So for those of you that may have been using the previous version of the Yammer desktop experience, we're actually going to be deprecating that. You can use the Communities app in Teams. You can also use what's industry-wise known as a progressive web app. It's essentially a way for you to have a, whether it be Edge or Chrome based app that you can have a focused Yammer experience in. By the way, if you haven't already, really highly recommend that you roll out the Yammer Communities app in Teams. That's been one of the most highly engaged ways for Yammer users to be accessing Yammer right from within the confines or the context of Teams. You can get your Yammer notifications right in there. Move right over to the Communities app and get the full fidelity of the Yammer experience right inside of Teams. We're also working on improvements to the Outlook experience. We continue to improve the Outlook notification experience. Hopefully you know today that you can get those rich, vibrant, interactive Yammer notifications in Outlook, be able to like, comment, react right from within Outlook. We're going to be rolling out that really slick interactive display in the Discovery and Daily Digest emails as well. And we're continuing to also improve the Outlook desktop experience for those Yammer notifications. So you'll see a lot of parity between the Outlook web and Outlook desktop experience for Yammer notifications. We also, many of you have over the years that I've talked to, have also asked for better analytics within Yammer. So we've recently rolled out some updates to the community insights. You should now be able to also see live event insights. So for those of you running live events, we hear many of our customers using live events over the past year to better connect their leaders in a more visual way with their employees. So now you can get data about the reach of those events, how many people are participating in those live events, where are people coming in and out, what's the engagement look like for those live events. Really great stuff for live events. And then over the next, the rest of this month, there's one other insight that we'll be providing, which is conversation insights, which will allow you as administrators or community owners to be able to see individual threads and how those are performing. So maybe you've done an announcement, you want to see what the reach of that announcement has been, how has that trended over a period of time, those sorts of things. So we've done a lot of work on insights and are excited to roll those things out as well. We also recently, last thing I'll cover, and I'll turn it back over to David. Last thing, we also GA'd Azure B2B guest access for Yammer communities. So now you can apply the same guest model if you need to bring in external folks to your communities. Now it's the same guest model that you would use in Teams or Outlook groups or across Microsoft 365 groups as you would in Yammer. So that's just a snapshot. There's a bunch more that I could go over. I'll happy to answer other questions as we go along. But David, hopefully that's enough of a teaser, and I'll turn it back to you.
Steve, I feel like that's more than a teaser. I've just learned things from you just talking all of us through that there. Sounds like there's some absolutely fantastic, updates coming to the platform. I mean, we at WM Reply, we obviously love Yammer. We're huge advocates and fans of it. And anyone that's got any questions for Steve, he's going to be part of the panel. So please feel free to ask as part of the Q&A feature. And I think Steve really nicely summed it up there, that actually when it comes to the next stage of getting ready for Viva, it's very much about Yammer and thinking about that launch and that adoption of the platform. And I challenge you that if you haven't seen the new Yammer yet, go and look it up. It's a completely different user experience. It's vastly improved from, that look and feel that it used to have. And that leads us on to, is Yammer even on in your organization? And if it is on, is it being used? Does it have a plan? Does it have a purpose? And does it have a part to play? Are senior leaders being active on it? Are people engaging for it? The analytics are going to evidently be there to back up how people are using it today. So really start to think about how you can, use that as a great way to enhance your employee engagement, because obviously that's what Viva and all the modules are about. It's all about that employee experience and the engagement that we get from that. So when we are happy with our Yammer communities and they're launched and they're being adopted, the next thing to start to think about is the Teams mobile app. We saw in the demonstration from Chris, some of these really rich features are going to be coming into that mobile experience. And it's really, really key that people know that they can access Teams through that mobile app. And obviously, depending on your policies and your configuration, there might be certain conditions such as, what device they can use it on, whether it be a work one or a personal. And, if there's any security settings, start to think about that now if it isn't already the case, and how you can start to put the security wrap around it and get people actively using the Teams mobile app. And also, let's go back to that discovery that we did right at the start. What did that tell you about how people are using it and different persona groups? Are people asking for it? What can you use to kind of leverage maybe getting people to use it more? And as we just heard from Steve there, pinning the Yammer app is going to be the next stage in this journey for us. So it's very much about making sure that the Yammer, known as the Communities app within Teams, is pinned to the Teams bar. Also, the Insights is another app that you can get pinned into the Teams bar as well. Make it as easy as possible for people to access. Start to really, really utilize Teams as that single pane of glass that people access the vast, vast applications and experiences of Microsoft 365 and promote that ease of experience. Let's not, hide it away. Let's really be bold and be brave in how we sell these campaigns and we talk to people about the benefits. Let's not shy away because it might not work. It's been tested. Yes, maybe hiccups happen along the way, but actually it's all about promoting the benefits, and the more people use it, the more people will discover those benefits themselves. So penultimate step for us is going to be setting up our SharePoint intranet as a home site. So making sure your intranet is your SharePoint home site, and this will ensure that you're ready for the big day. That's something you can do now, by the way. That whole desktop experience through Teams of Viva Connections is available now, and make sure that it's pinned into the Teams app. Use that Teams app rail to the biggest advantage you can, because if I, as an end user, land in Teams one day and see something new, I think, oh, what's that? And that allows me to go and explore, discover, find out more. And then the last step that we need to think about to get ready for Viva is we heard about Viva Insights. And obviously that's going to give us a lot of data. But how comfortable are our people, our leaders, our managers, and actually using data to make decisions? It's going to be potentially a little bit of a cultural shift where, this data we can see and the recommendations that are going to be coming through are fantastic. But if we don't act on some of these, decisions and the data that's happening, then actually we're not going to see any impact from Viva Insights, because it's going to be giving us the data, it's going to be making the recommendations, but actually we need our leaders and our people to act on that. So i.e. me personally, if I see something in Viva Insights about maybe, I don't know, having not responded to an email in an adequate amount of time, or maybe the hours that my team are working and how we all need to match up a bit more, maybe communicate or meet on a more regular basis to sync, then actually me as a manager, me as an employee, I need to act on that to make sure that we're actually getting the best possible use out of that data and information. So all of this, when it comes together for us, that's going to be helping us on that Viva journey. So those are 10 things that you can do now to start to think about getting ready for Viva. Some of the stuff obviously is relatively easy, quite a simple thing, maybe something like a setting. Other stuff is going to take us more time. So it's all about how we start to think about this to drive forward our Viva journey. So thanks very much for listening. Obviously, if you've got any questions for me, please put them in the Q&A, and I'm going to hand back to Jessie.
Thanks so much, David. That was really helpful information on how organizations can really start to become Viva ready. So now we're going to have a wonderful customer journey delivered by James Montfort, Senior Communications Manager at Transport for London. So James, take it away.
Thank you so much, Jessie. I'm going to talk you through our digital workplace journey and highlight some of our key milestones over the years that have really put us in a great place to look to use Viva Connections. A little bit about me. I joined TfL, or Transport for London, in 2014 as a communications executive and supported a part of London Underground. In my 7 years here, I've had some fantastic opportunities to gain experience and most recently found my calling to better support our team with our increasing use of digital channels and tools. Just a brief bit about TfL. We were formed in 2000 and we're the integrated transport authority responsible for meeting our mayoral strategy and commitments on transport in our great capital city. We run the day-to-day operation of the capital's public transport network and manage London's main roads. We employ about 28,000 people directly, of which London Underground makes up roughly 3/4, and that includes the people who work in our stations, operate our trains, and work predominantly at night maintaining our infrastructure. With a few exceptions, frontline roles and other modes that you might be familiar with, such as the iconic Emirates airline that I'm on today, are run by third parties that we manage through arrangements such as concession control. That means that we don't have a direct internal communications connection with those colleagues. To start our journey, cast your mind back to 2012. So the iPhone 5 was the most popular smartphone of the day. Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II had just had her Diamond Jubilee, and what a fantastic buzz that this gave London right before the Summer Olympic Games, which are one of the most memorable moments of my life as a Londoner. This was also the year that we had our first wide-scale use of Yammer, although we'd had the network in some form or other since 2009. You may remember seeing lots of these people, like the lady in the photograph there with the pink hi-fi. These were our travel ambassadors, and they used Yammer to keep in touch with each other and receive updates from the business. But after the games ended, Yammer was kind of left enabled, but with no genuine business ownership. As I'm sure is familiar to some of you, someone did something that they shouldn't, and suddenly the shutters were pulled down on our network. And that was it for a few years. Our team pushed to reintroduce Yammer in 2015 following feedback that we'd had in our previous year's employee engagement survey. We reintroduced Yammer prior to our IT team rolling out any of the other Microsoft 365 apps. We had a solid launch campaign and really focused on sort of growing communities through a pilot before the relaunch. And in addition to consistent kind of leadership adoption support, our network has grown from strength to strength. The chart you can see on the slide shows the combined growth of messages, praises, topic mentions, user mentions, message shares, likes and file uploads on our network. And I've highlighted a few key milestones that have really had a direct impact on driving growth. As a snapshot, in the past 30 days, we've had 23,000 users who've accessed Yammer in some form or another. We're finding that features such as the interactive emails that you heard Steve talk about in Outlook and the Communities app in Teams are really helping to surface Yammer to people who may have typically have avoided that social media thing in the past. Out of those 23,000 users, between 4 to 6 a month will contribute content. So we've got a huge captive audience and a lot of lurkers. And finally, we have about 300 active communities, and it's fantastic to see so many community administrators really enjoying the benefits that the new Yammer brings, such as the ability to change the default message type to a question, pin a thread to the top of the community, and do things like announce questions, praise, and polls. Moving a bit further back in time, with our intranets, the last successful attempts at an intranet project at TfL, before the one you're going to hear about very soon, left the business with two. One was for TfL, and we called that Source, and that launched in 2005, which you can see on the left. And then there came along another one for London Underground in 2010. On the right is a screenshot of Source 15 years later, just before we decommissioned it last year. And as you can see, the difference between the two, it's pretty clear that we struggled to keep it fresh and up to date, and we had a particularly antiquated content management system. To further complicate matters, a third intranet also came along after London Underground in 2010, and this was pushed through as part of work to give our business a single management system library of policies, processes, standards and guidance documents and the like. So between 2012 and 2020, we had three separate intranets. And in that decade, there was also a shift to using in the business things like virtualized desktops, which made our intranets accessible at home for the first time. And things like the shift from Blackberries to smartphones and the use of the virtual private network also allowed our intranets to be accessible on the go, although they weren't mobile responsive and you could barely use them in your hand. And finally, in the last decade, we also had no less than 3 major stop-start projects to provide employees with one in modern mobile responsive intranet. The next step in our journey was very employee focused. It was to replace our employee discounts portal and introduce online payslips. It was extremely high profile because it related to the two things that I think every employee is particularly interested in, their pay and their reward. I got involved in the project back in 2018, and I was just initially there to support with the internal communications plan. Part of the plan needed to win the hearts and minds of our frontline colleagues, so the ones that don't really access technology an awful lot during their day, and explain how we weren't going to be printing payslips anymore, which at the time lots of people thought would stop the world from spinning. I quickly realised as I started to pull together my comms plan that some key decisions had already been made that would make my job as a communicator very tricky, noticeably because 2 suppliers were involved, that we'd have to give users 2 separate login details. So you've got a set of details for discounts and benefits, and then one for payslips. And it was even suggested that our frontline-based, shift-based colleagues, who at the time didn't have regular access to a work email address and password, use this email to manage the 2 accounts with things like password resets. At this, including myself, had just started to adopt those digital workplace tools, and also our Yammer network was moving towards using those Microsoft 365 credentials instead of the separate old Yammer credentials. And as a regular employee, I'd started to see things like single sign-on or SSO start to be used with other applications. Fortunately, because I was involved in a very early stage of the project, along with an enthusiastic IT colleague, we managed to push the project to reconsider their setup to make not only our lives easier, but ultimately provide a seamless experience for our users. What won the argument to use SSO? As part of the adoption and change activity, we made sure that every employee had a work email address and password well before we launched. To do things like plug Yammer and the other tools that they can now access from any device anywhere, such as our online learning platform. During the process, the need for the user to be signed up to multi-factor authentication, or MFA, became a requirement. But again, we managed to be able to get that MFA set up into a first-use registration scenario with that online payslip, rather than making the user have to go and visit a work computer. And this is really important for our frontline colleagues. In hindsight, this was such a great, prudent decision to have made, and it's really helped adoption of our digital workplace tools, including our wonderful new intranet platform that WM Reply supported us to deliver last year. Platform is where our digital workplace journey got very exciting. The project to design and implement our new intranet to replace the 3 that colleagues were using that I told you about just a second ago. Work properly started on the 4th attempt of the decade back in early 2019. And this was my first intranet project at TfL, and I was really keen to work with the newly formed digital workplace team to look at the learnings of the past and what we needed to do differently to get something off the ground this time. We quickly realised that we needed to rein in the scope and look to deliver a minimum viable product that utilised the existing significant digital workplace investment that the business had made, most noticeably in that Microsoft 365 ecosystem. After appointing WM Reply in September that year, work began at pace. However, who would have thought that towards the end of the year, about the time I think we were finalising our information architecture, that the following year would be dominated by the global pandemic. As part of that, in March, we introduced a COVID-19 all-employee hub that, thanks to that earlier SSO single sign-on adoption work, has made it really easy for about just over 60% of the business to have accessed from any device anywhere. And this was also the first time that many in the organisation had seen a modern best practice communication site in action. And building on that success, we found ourselves quickly following up with a separate dedicated COVID-19 site for our line manager community, which has seen virtually 100% adoption and has now evolved into kind of a more general resource for that community. And back to platform. Thanks to some great teamwork and agile delivery with the project, we launched our minimum viable product on the 2nd of July. We'd made some key architecture decisions, such as the use of multiple hubs, and made sure that we really used an out-of-the-box mobile-first approach. That, thinking back at the time, is quite bold and in some cases a challenging move to make, particularly when that saw us having to look at our requirements again and adapt them, park them, or in some cases drop them as a result. Was our launch 100% perfect? No. But knowing that we've launched on an evergreen platform and with the kind of the looming costly extended support deadlines with our former intranets coming up in September, I'm really proud that between us, the team have finally been able to get something out the door. After launch, we used feedback and insight from analytics to make refinements, and most recently we put in place a second phase of work to deliver 12 or so kind of discrete backlog items of development. This has ranged from introducing some new WM Reply accelerator web parts through to updating content areas such as our jargon buster, which now ties into Microsoft's vision for search. And the numbers do really speak for themselves. We've had just under 1,000 unique viewers since launch on our intranet. Our news hub is typically accessed by 14,000 users every month, and our homepage application launchpad has been customized by just over 10,000 users. I couldn't not talk about Teams. Like most organizations, the pandemic has threw our digital workplace journey into overdrive. Taking a step back to the start of last year, very few in the business were using the kind of Microsoft ecosystem other than really Yammer and SharePoint Online. Skype for Business and Exchange were still on premises, and we had a goal to transitioning everyone to the kind of online equivalents, and then finally everyone to that full Teams mode by the end of last year. But the pandemic and the overnight move for our office-based colleagues to be working from home saw a rapid acceleration of our Teams deployment plan. We've also been able to get our frontline colleagues access to instant messaging for the first time, and lots of work to overcome some legacy kind of HR policy and trade union challenges to make instant messaging available to everyone for the first time. And now in 2021, Teams meetings, as I'm sure are the case with many of you, are now commonplace. And the focus this year for my digital workplace colleagues and us as an internal communications team is to help our frontline colleagues get the most out of Teams. So in summary, I mean, our digital workplace journey has seen us a huge number of challenges over the past 2 decades, but as a business, we've really come so far. We're now using the full Microsoft 365 suite. I mean, 2/3 of the business have accessed Yammer, as I've talked about, with between 5,000 to 6,000 a month creating content. We've got the latest in intranet technology, and over half our business read our news stories every month. Our business has also started to do things like embrace live events, and so it's great, even though so many of our colleagues are not office-based and work out on the front line. And that's why we're so excited to keep moving forward on that journey to our next step. Last year, we were fortunate enough to be invited by Microsoft to take part in a project which has evolved into what is now Viva Connections. And so on that journey, it became clear that several prerequisites would need to be in place for connections to come to life at TfL. Things like the Sharepoint app bar is a great example of where we're ready to go. I mean, we've got the global navigation in place with platform, our home site is set, and our news is already relevant to the user because we're doing things such as using audience targeting. We're now looking to pilot connections and teams on the desktop in advance of a kind of wider intranet update in the summer, where we'll do things like look to turn the app bar on and reorganize our homepage. And we're also keen to try the mobile experience when that becomes available to pilot. So in summary, we're well placed to take our next steps with Viva Connections. And with that, I'd like to hand back to Jessie, I think, for the panel session.
Thank you so much, James. That was such a great customer journey. We have a question from Steve Wen, so I'll let him ask that question now. Steve, over to you.
Yeah, real quick, James, thank you so much for taking us through this. It's hopefully it provides some inspiration to those that are here on how to get started, what the elements of success are going to be for Viva Connections to be meaningful for others. So thank you for walking us through this. I wanted to ask you a question about some of your Yammer usage. In past conversations I've had with you all, and if you're not able to answer this, it's fine. But I recall a conversation where you all shared you have folks that are on certain lines and they're very isolated in nature. They don't have many connections with other people, but they've been able to use Yammer as they're just sitting on a line waiting to switch the rail when the train comes, and they're out there for 8, 10, 12 hours a day. It can be very isolating. While many of our customers that might be on this call don't have people working on a rail, but I think many people have at their organizations have experienced this sense of isolation over the past year or so. But I just wondered if you could, if that's something you're familiar with and can share a little bit about that community of people.
Yeah, I mean, there's always more work to do with this frontline audience, but if you think about the large audience that drive our trains, we see, or their line manager or their desk-based manager sees them for 7 minutes at the start of their shift officially, and that's it. They go off and drive their train. They're not allowed to look at their phone. It's a safety critical role, and they don't even need to necessarily come back to that desk to finish their work. So we have a growing community within that audience, and whether it's work related, so we have lots of kind of private based communities where they might be able to collaborate with their depot colleagues and swap shifts. It sounds pretty basic, but kind of even like take paper based rosters and actually make them available electronically has been successful in the depots where it's been used, through to kind of taking part in our kind of communities of interest. I mean, there's a community for everything at TfL, whether you like cats or dogs, or whether you're into a member of our staff network groups. There's something for everyone. I think that's been one of the reasons it's been so successful here.
Thank you so much. That was a great response, James. Really appreciate you sharing your customer journey with us. So just a quick note before we move on to next steps and open our panel discussion, that just want to let everyone out there in the audience know that we will be sending out the recording to you after the session so that you have the materials that we covered today. And then just want to talk to you really quickly about some of the next steps that you can take with Viva. So you can learn more about Viva at the Microsoft Viva website. Also learn more about syntax at the Sharepoint Syntax site. And then if you have any questions, or you just want to have a discussion about how to get your roadmap on track, or you want to learn more about each of the different modules for Viva, give myself, Jessie Narducci, or David Callahan a call. I am located out of the Americas. David is covering Europe, so you can contact either one of us. We're more than happy just to jump on a quick call, answer your questions, talk about your roadmap, and then discuss next steps that will really work with your organization. So now we're going to transition to the panel portion of our session. I just want to quickly reintroduce some of the panelists, and then just as a reminder, in the right-hand side, you can enter in your questions, and we are more than happy to take your questions, and our panelists will do our best to get you the answers. So again, I'm Justine Arducci from WM Reply. We've got David Callahan from WM Reply. We've also got Chris McNulty, the Director of Product Marketing for Microsoft, Michael Holste, Senior Product Marketing Manager at Microsoft, Steve Wen, Principal Program Manager at Microsoft for Yammer, and then of course James Montfort, Senior Communications Manager at Transport for London. So again, feel free to introduce your questions into the chat, and we're more than happy to take questions and field those for you. So I see a couple popping up. One of the questions is there possibilities to take out reports on Viva Learning? So I think maybe Chris or Michael, is there a way right now for individuals to have reporting information when it comes to Microsoft Learning?
I'll need to look into this and follow up, but I do believe that you have insights into progress that team members are making on assigned learning. I do think you can also download a report on that, but I do need to check back.
Okay, so maybe that's something that we'll follow up on later on. And then we have another question. How is Platform using Office 365 profiles for colleague search? And again, maybe we'll, Michael or Chris can take that question.
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand the part about platform there, but let me just say, when you're looking at a tool like Topics, or if you're looking at Microsoft Search, when you are finding individuals, whether it's because they're explicit experts or they're being suggested to you in the flow of something like Topics, the key thing that's coming there is the people profile, which is exposed through the graph. And so the attributes on that profile, which can be enriched with a service like Viva Topics, are all available to there to you for search.
Thank you so much, Chris. And I just realized, I think Platform is the title of James Montfort's TFL intranet. So I'm also going to turn that question over to James to answer. And the question again is, how is Platform using O365 profiles for colleague search?
So when we launched Platform, we didn't have particularly lots of information in our Azure Active Directory. So we made sure that we had as much as possible coming in through our on-premise sync. And most recently, we've been encouraging employees, particularly with working from home, to kind of complete and update their contact information as much as possible. And with one of those 12-second bits of development I talked about, one of those is actually a profile completeness web part that will sit on our homepage and kind of gamify a little bit the employee to complete. We've had to do things as well, like sync the Microsoft 365 profile contact information into the SharePoint user profile, so there's a consistent search experience, which is a little quirk that we've had to overcome with the setup, but so far so good. I mean, we were really keen to get that search insight, which is something that's landing very soon, I believe, that will allow us as intranet owners to better understand what our employees are searching for and where they're missing. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yes, thank you so much, James. And I have a question for Chris McNulty. What is the resource demand on maintaining topics? I can imagine that gathering and verifying the information might be a lot of work, but what does the typical support model look like for that, and how is the information updated?
Yeah, so I answered that a little bit in chat, but let me expand it a bit. So maintaining topics, you can think of as a natural extension of the work that your IT and knowledge manager teams are already doing. It requires some periodic check-ins on the topic center to see which new topics have been found or discovered, and to decide whether those topics make sense in the flow of work. That's typically a business role, much more than it is an IT role. To be able to look at a topic and say, yes, this matches something that's known to our business, and the people that have been suggested as experts are the right ones or consent to it. But Viva Topics is also an ongoing activity. I mean, there's a lot of work that happens in the first 2 weeks as the AI coalesces all the signals from the graph and all reindexes all the content and so forth. But then on an ongoing basis, as content is either edited or modified, it comes into scope and becomes eligible to enrich pages, to add alternative definitions and the rest.
Okay, thank you so much for that response, Chris. We also have another question coming in saying, are you saying connections cannot replace existing organizational intranet? What are the limitations of SharePoint home site applications? Cannot crawl on classic sites, cannot connect non-Microsoft based resources? And I think I'll turn that one over to you, Michael Holste.
Great, thank you. So Connections is really an evolution of your intranet. For savvy IT pros or even savvy end users watching from home, you might recognize a lot of what you see in Viva Connections as being powered by a SharePoint home site. Back at Ignite this past fall, we announced the SharePoint home site app for Microsoft Teams. While that is a very Microsoft-esque name for it, we actually ended up productizing that concept of bringing your home site into Teams as Viva Connections. So Viva Connections can do everything that your SharePoint home site can do. It can use adaptive cards, it can use audience targeting, it can use custom dashboards and resources for different employee types. So there's not actually a limitation there. It's an extension of what you can build into your intranet and then package it into your kind of employee app that you can give your own name to, your own logo to, and deploy right into Microsoft Teams where people are doing a lot of their work, saving your employees steps of having to go into their intranet, navigate through it, and try and kind of synthesize all that material for them. So you can connect third-party content, you can connect your own line of business apps. You have the entire power of the SharePoint developer framework behind Viva Connections, and Viva Connections is really that touch point for all of your employees.
Yes, thank you so much, Mike, for such a great response and really keeping things focused on the employee experience. So we have another question for James from TFL about how many of your frontline users use their own devices, and are they utilizing F1, F3, or M365 licenses?
I don't have the frontline use of own devices, but if you think about of personal devices, but if you think about people in our stations, for example, so an audience of about 4,000, they're provided with a work iPad, and that's they have business applications that they use to do all sorts of weird and wonderful things that make our stations work. But we have an active, overall we have a really active bring your own device community. I'm sorry, what was the final part of the question? Because I think it's just disappeared off the feed, Jesse.
Yeah, sorry, just let me I'm not sure where it went.
I think it was about the licenses, James, in terms of kind of how you license them to, give them the access.
Yep. So everyone is licensed with E3, I'm told.
Okay, great to know. We also have a question. Who do you think should own Viva in our organization? What team do you think is the best fit? Should we identify a separate product owner? So I'll throw that out to anyone on the panel who might want to weigh in about how within an organization that would fit. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, I'll say that a lot of the early uptake in organizations is really being driven on the digital front. Typically coming in through the CHRO, the Chief Human Resources Officer organization. If there are learning or Chief Digital Officer parts of the business, that seems to be where it comes in. IT can help, but IT can just sometimes is thinking in terms of what to install and how to turn it on, and getting that sponsorship and ownership of Viva from the business side, we think is essential to success.
You bet. Thank you so much, Chris, for that response. We do have another question for James from TFL. With the TFL journey, how much did you have to consider your SharePoint Online intranet construction in terms of it being ready for Viva? Was it mainly around just being a modern Pages intranet site?
Oh gosh, so back in 2019, when I think Viva was a twinkle in the stars, in the sky for Microsoft, we had a choice of not going down the modern SharePoint communications site road, and in hindsight, I'm glad we did, because I think we would be having to do another intranet project to fully utilize some of the technology that we're getting as part of our existing licenses now.
Great, thanks so much, James. We do have another question. What's Microsoft's long-term plan for Delve? So maybe
I can take a stab at that. Delve has informed us on a lot of experiences with regards to discovering the content people are accessing, and using signals from across the graph to inform your network of people that you work with about some of those work assets. We're continuing to look at how to incorporate some of those things, even into things like Viva Connections as well. Delve for the time being will continue to be a place that you can still use to be able to understand what your colleagues are working on, and have access to, of course, content that you're provisioned to be able to have access to. But we continue to learn about how we incorporate some of those Delve experiences across the suite.
Yep. Let me just camp on that, because it's a question we do get from some organizations who are kind of looking at our announcements back in the 2015 era and are trying to map it into where we are 6 years later. So the underlying constructs of Delve are the Microsoft Graph, and that's fundamental to everything you're seeing us do moving forward across not just Viva, but across all of Microsoft 365. And you are seeing Delve show up in areas like people search results and people cards and the integrated feed as part of Connections. I do want to caution, if you're looking kind of for a detailed Delve roadmap, or when are the features of Viva being integrated into the Delve platform, never say never, but you may be waiting a long time. I just want to be clear on that.
And I think, Chris, even when we initially released Delve, I think we were, I don't know if we're entirely clear, but what I remember is that we wanted to use it as an initial experience. Delve itself is a visual experience for the graph, as you described, and I think we've learned a lot about how people are interacting with the UI of Delve, but also understanding how we can better utilize some of those signals, across the suite, as you described.
Okay, thanks so much, Chris and Steve. So we have another question. What is the roadmap for search? We have seen limitations with modern search as compared to classic. So what search engine is Viva utilizing? And Michael, I think I'll throw that one to you.
Yeah, great, thank you. So Viva is using Microsoft Search, and it's a little differentiator from when you're standardly in Teams and you go to the search bar, you're searching through your files, your chat, your kind of Microsoft Teams activity. When you're in the Viva Connections app within Teams, it's actually using Microsoft Search, and it's searching your intranet. Now our roadmap, we're making search much more personal. We are investing a lot in Microsoft Search. I'd really recommend. We have a great blog from our fall Ignite about what the roadmap looks like, and a lot of session content, but we're focusing on features like making it more people-centric, being able to find and add skills and expertise so that we can create subject matter experts around people, so you can find the right person even easier. And then, of course, the longer term game with that is to connect it to the Viva Topics, so that not only can you find the topics you care about, but you can find the key players who know about those topics within your organization. Similarly, we also are adding Power BI search, so that you can look through all of those analytics directly in the flow of work as well, and that will pop up in your intranet search. And then, of course, we're always improving conversation search to pull conversations that you're a part of and that you have access to from Teams and from Yammer right into Microsoft Search. But I'm happy to share the link in the chat that details more about these features and what's next for search.
Yeah,
That would be great.
I'll also just quickly add, Syntax is on the roadmap. Syntax is going to add 2 new features into Microsoft Search. The first is going to be natural inclusion of the metadata that you extract as facets into a search. So being able to add those facets into search results that'll just flow automatically without them having to be separately wired up, along with support for the extended search connectors to be able to bring the 130 sources that we wire up into Microsoft Search using content connectors. You'll be able to flow them forward into areas like topics, as well as start to take advantage of bidirectional sync. All of that is on the roadmap, not near term, but definitely a lot more that's coming.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Chris and Mike, for those responses. We did have a follow-up question for James, which is one of our audience members didn't get what type of licenses. So was it the E3 license for your?
Yeah, everyone in the business is licensed with E3, and I've confirmed our bring your own device audience is 10,000.
Okay, thanks so much for following up on that, James. Really appreciate it. So another question is, do we think that the SharePoint mobile app still has a place in the workplace with the introduction of Viva Connections through Teams? So Chris or Mike or Steve, thoughts on that?
I'm happy to jump on this. I do believe that there are use cases for the SharePoint intranet, especially if you have pinned wayfinding in there that you rely on in order to stay productive and quickly access, your kind of frequently necessary documents. But Viva Connections, especially when it's available for mobile this summer, is designed to make it simpler to find all of your information from a single app. So one of the big customer questions that led to the development of Viva Connections was that currently in Microsoft 365, if you want to get the full value of the suite in the mobile experience, you might have to download the SharePoint mobile app and the Yammer mobile app and the Teams mobile app and a number of other mobile apps. Now, the Viva Connections is really designed to bring all of that into a single place. So yes, we will still, of course, be developing the SharePoint mobile app. There's still going to be use cases for it, definitely, especially if you're a site owner and you want to edit site content or change site content like that, or add sites, change navigation. But for end users, Viva Connections is definitely the place we're going to want to steer them.
Yeah, and the SharePoint app has some key optimizations for getting into things like list data. Is one of the key use cases that's out there. But just be mindful just to go back to the discussion that Michael was doing over an hour ago about some of the rationale for Viva in the first place, that there are employee experience solutions that exist in the market today. Some are from Microsoft, some are from others, and that they're fragmented. We think of the fragmentation kind of in an intranet perspective, that where's the link to this, where's the link to that, how do we bring it all together? If you're on I'd just say postmodern mobile device, especially, there are applications you may have forgotten that you've installed, or you have to go remember, is there an app for it? And Microsoft contributes to this. Even the more apps that we have, the harder it is for people to navigate on a mobile device. That's why we've done things like the Union app over the last 2 years, bringing Word, Excel, and PowerPoint together into a common app to reduce that space. And the more we plug things like connections into Teams, the more we're reducing your need to navigate a fairly complex suite of applications on about 4 inches of glass.
Interesting. Okay, thanks, Chris, so much for that response. We do have another question. Can you explain what type of behavior I can expect if I added a Viva Connections web part on my intranet home site?
So we'd probably love a little more clarification on whose behaviors, but definitely for an employee, it's a single place for them to stay up to date with the conversations and the news that they're part of, or news that's coming from corporate communications professionals at the business who are trying to get their message out to certain employee types. Of course, they can also find all of those tailored resources for them. Everything in their dashboard is going to either be specific to them or pinned by them. So the exact behaviors they take there, they could go to do a quick health check. They could go there for required learnings. They could go there for guided meditation or virtual commutes. They could go there to check their company stock price. It's entirely going to depend on the type of employee they are and the things that they care about and the things they need to accomplish in their day-to-day.
Yes, and also just taking into account that Viva Connections, it does pull your modern SharePoint Intranet site right into Teams, so that all of your web parts are then available in that Teams environment for that ultimate kind of employee experience. So another question we have is, can I surface existing Power Apps through Connections, through Viva Connections? Mike or Chris?
Yes, you will be able to. Again, keeping in mind that everything in Viva Connections is powered by the SharePoint framework. So as long as you can build them into a web part or into a dashboard, you will be able to bring them into Viva Connections.
Wonderful. And I know we have a lot of customers very excited about automating business processes with the Power Platform. So being able to pull those business processes again right into Viva Connections, into Teams, so that the employee has that very seamless employee experience is really streamlining the way that the ways of working for the future of the digital workplace. So is it possible that we can modify Office 365 profiles for badging experts? And then it also has a follow-up question, and leverage LinkedIn functionalities like endorsements, etc. So I'm wondering if this has to do with the Viva Learning.
That's a good question. That might go beyond the scope of what us on the call may know. Through tech, I like to say all things are possible, but at the moment, just uncertain about that.
Okay, so maybe this is one of those questions where keep up with the Microsoft Viva blog. As new features and functionalities are rolling out and enhancements are being made to all of the Microsoft Viva modules, there's going to be a lot of features and capabilities in the future on the roadmap. So definitely stay in touch with the Microsoft Viva blog to learn more. Another question is, would it be fair to summarize Microsoft Viva as a program geared more toward users rather than Office 365 admins? So Mike, Chris, thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I have a perspective on this. I'd also invite Chris, who may have a different perspective on this, but at the end of the day, this is an employee app that puts the employee at the center and is really geared towards helping individual employees get what's important to them, carve out time, focus on their own well-being, focus on their own career development, help them connect to their coworkers and to leadership, help them connect to the information that they need. So yes, at the center, at the core of Microsoft Viva is the employee. Now, I also think that there are benefits to admins. When we talked earlier about having to deploy all these multiple apps and help coach end users through the story of which tool to use when, Viva helps simplify that. By giving them a single place to go, it's easier to help your end users understand the way that your business is going to use these products. Similarly, by giving them a common touch point for their communications and their learning and their insights, that helps leadership teams and corporate communicators solve that multi-channel problem and really publish things in a place where they know that employees are going to get their hands on it. Well, there's a little more legwork involved initially getting this off the ground for IT departments. At the end of the day, hopefully this will actually simplify their workflow because they know that they can do it once and all their employees will get it and get it in a way that's really relevant and personal to them.
Yeah, I mean, I think Michael had it right. I'm going to expand it a little bit and say, I think it's for managers as much as it is for users, and less about IT. And in that, like, for example, if you're a team lead, which courses do you want to recommend to your team coming from Viva Learning? How are people working and collaborating after hours coming out of insights? What news do I want to target to my team to make sure they can consume it through the Connections app? What are the subjects that are going to be most important for my team to know what makes sense for them to share internally or externally? It's really that focus. IT still absolutely has a role, but we see kind of the ownership being something that's definitely driven from that tier of the business.
Yeah, and I just want to add to that as well, and say that I think it's really obvious from my perspective that this is very much about the employee experience, and it's all about engaging the employee through the platform. And you could argue that most of, if not all of, Microsoft 365, when it comes to kind of end user applications, are about the people and the communities that they help to support. It's very little in the background that sometimes needs to get done from administrators to make these things happen, but the actual impact and the benefits realization doesn't come through until it's people and our workforces out there day to day that are actually using and utilizing the tools and changing the way that they work. That really is where we start to see those kind of business transformations coming through. So for me, when I first saw something like Microsoft Viva being announced, I fundamentally saw this as a massive opportunity for organizations to improve how they're engaging with people, where people are finding information, and actually just giving teams even more purpose itself, so that people can find the information they need without having to go to OneDrive or to SharePoint or to Teams, but bringing through that whole user journey into that collective experience. And that's where it will start to live even more so than if it hasn't already.
Yeah, thank you so much for that added insight, David. Are there any final questions from anyone out there in the audience? We're more than happy to take a question or two. So feel free to ping something in the chat. Okay, we don't see anything coming across, so I just want to deliver a special thanks to all of our presenters today. David, Chris, Michael, Steve, and James, thank you so much for all of your insights into Microsoft Viva and helping organizations understand what Viva is, how they can get on track and get Viva ready, and then what a customer journey really looks like. So thank you so much to everyone who was able to attend. We're thrilled and delighted to have you here today. And then just a quick note, we are going to be sending out the recording to everyone who registered. So after the session, you will be receiving a recording too, just so that you can have that and share it with any of your colleagues, of course, that are looking for some insight into Microsoft Viva. So thank you again, everyone. Really appreciate the attendance today. And again, if you have any questions or just want to have a conversation around Microsoft Viva, contact me, Jessie Narducci, contact David Callahan. We're more than happy to just hop on a quick call, answer your questions, help make some recommendations about your roadmap anytime. So thank you so much, everyone. It was a real pleasure.
Thanks all.
Great, thanks for having us.